So blank. I'm thinking of my parents who are watching now.
Sabalenka panics after Alexandra Eala receives huge, unexpected honor. Something inside the women's tennis world just broke. A rising underdog, Alexandra Eala, suddenly gets a shock honor that sends shockwaves through the hierarchy. And at the very top, Aryna Sabalenka doesn't hide her unease. Nobody saw it coming, but when Eala's name flashed and the cheers echoed, the silence from Sabalenka was louder than any applause.
Before the world ever heard her name, Alexandra Eala walked through the halls of tennis academies as the quiet one, the girl with a backpack too big for her shoulders and dreams even bigger than that. She didn't talk much. She didn't brag. She didn't tell people she wanted to change the sport. But people who watched her hit the ball knew she wasn't normal talent. She was something else. Coaches whispered, players observed, rivals took notes. But none of them imagined she would one day step into the spotlight so fast that even top players, even someone like Aryna Sabalenka, would feel the ground shift under their feet. The 2025 season didn't start with fireworks for Eala. It started with grind. Late nights, practice sessions nobody filmed, losses that cut deeper than fans realized, and moments where she almost questioned if she was built for this stage. And yet, every time she stepped off court, she carried herself like someone who believed her breakthrough was coming. And then, suddenly, it did. First came the upset wins, matches where commentators looked at the scoreline and blinked twice. Then came the tournament runs that made fans lean forward, rewind highlights, and ask, who is this girl? But what made Eala different wasn't just her game, it was the aura she carried. She didn't try to be dramatic, she didn't chase attention, and because of that, attention chased her. This is where the tension began. Because every era of women's tennis has its quiet disruptors, players who come out of nowhere and make the giants uncomfortable without saying a word. And Alexandra Eala, she was becoming exactly that. As she kept winning, as her name climbed rankings and headlines, the top players began noticing, especially Sabalenka, fiery, fierce, dominant, emotional Sabalenka, who had spent years fighting for the top spot and was not ready to share the stage with someone as unexpected as Eala. Still, nobody could predict what was about to happen next, because Eala's rise was one thing, but the honor she would soon receive, that was something nobody saw coming. Not fans, not journalists, not even Eala herself. And especially not Sabalenka, who, according to insiders, went from confused to rattled to something dangerously close to panic. But before we get there, before the shock and the fallout, we have to understand why this honor meant so much and why it became the spark that lit one of the most unexpected tensions in recent tennis history. Because when Eala stepped onto the stage to receive it, she wasn't just accepting a trophy. She was stepping into a political storm, a rivalry she didn't ask for, and a spotlight bright enough to blind even the strongest champion. And somewhere in the background, Sabalenka watched it unfold, realizing the sport she thought she controlled was suddenly slipping from her fingers. This was only the beginning.
The day started like any other. Tournament media, practice courts, players warming up, fans finding seats. But something strange floated through the air, the kind of tension that doesn't make noise, but still makes everyone turn their heads. The announcement was scheduled for noon. Nobody knew what it was. The email sent to players simply said, "A special recognition will be presented today." No name, no category, no hint. People assumed it would go to a veteran, maybe to a former champion, maybe someone retiring. But not a newcomer, not a teenager, not someone who wasn't even seated in most events a year ago. But when the screen at the ceremony flickered and the spotlight shifted to a single name, the entire tennis world stopped breathing. The recipient of the International Rising Legacy Honor is Alexandra Eala. The room froze. Gasps, whispers, stunned faces. Reporters frantically typing. And then the camera cut directly to Sabalenka. Her reaction? A micro-expression. 1 second, barely visible, but it said everything. Her jaw tightened, her eyebrows twitched, her arms crossed. she wasn't expecting this. She wasn't prepared for this. She wasn't happy about this. Because this wasn't just an award. This was symbolism, a message, a declaration that the sport was ready for a new star. One that didn't come from the usual tennis dynasties. One who wasn't molded in the system. One whose rise came from pure grit and international pride. A player who threatened the very hierarchy that Sabalenka sat on top of. As Eala walked up the stage, her steps slow and unsure, her eyes holding a mix of shock and humility, the crowd erupted into cheers. Real, emotional, thunderous cheers. Commentators whispered things like, "She's so young. This is surprising. This will shake some egos." And yet, Eala kept her composure. She accepted the plaque. She thanked her family. She gave credit to her team, her country, her supporters. But the moment that set social media on fire came next. A reporter asked her, "How does it feel to be recognized at such a young age?" Eala smiled slightly. She took a breath, and then she said the line that became the headline of the day. "I didn't expect it, but maybe the sport is changing." Those words hit like a punch. Changing? Into what? And who was being replaced? It didn't matter that Eala meant it innocently. The world didn't hear innocence. The world heard provocation. And Sabalenka? She heard a threat. Within minutes, fan accounts were posting side-by-side photos of Eala's smile and Sabalenka's reaction. Threads ignited, debates exploded. Was Sabalenka insecure? Was Eala being lifted too fast? Was this honor deserved? The stage was set, the tension was real, and what happened next turned it into a full-blown storm.
If awards are the spark, social media is the gasoline. The moment Eala received the honor, hashtags began trending worldwide. Clips of the ceremony spread into every corner of Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Some fans celebrated, others questioned it. Others turned it into a full-blown war of fandoms. But the loudest noise came from the reactions surrounding Sabalenka. Someone slowed down the footage of Sabalenka's expression. Someone else added dramatic music. Then another account added captions like, "Sabalenka is panicking. She didn't expect this. Eala just shook the queen." The narrative practically wrote itself. Even commentators joined the chaos, debating whether Sabalenka felt threatened or simply confused. A former player tweeted, "Top athletes don't like surprises, especially when new stars get elevated too fast." That tweet alone gathered thousands of retweets and fueled even more speculation. Meanwhile, Eala tried to stay calm. She posted a single message: grateful, humbled, motivated. And even that simple statement sparked arguments. Some fans wrote, "She deserves this, future superstar. This is history, let her shine." Others argued back, "Honor? Based on what? They're pushing her too early. This is politics, not tennis." And in the middle of all this noise was Eala, a teenager who never asked for an award, never sought controversy, and never expected her rise to cause ripples strong enough to hit championship players. But the truth is simple. When a new star rises, the established ones feel the heat, especially when that rising star is loved not only for her tennis, but for what she represents: youth, hope, diversity, a break from traditional tennis molds. As social media erupted, the tennis world began choosing sides. Some analysts argued that this award placed unnecessary pressure on Eala. Others said it was symbolic, a sign the sport was expanding, welcoming, evolving. And then someone posted a screenshot of Sabalenka liking, then quickly unliking, a cryptic post that said, "Not all honors are earned." It was impossible to confirm what happened, but that didn't matter. The damage was done. Fans screenshot it, screenshots spread, narratives formed. People now believe Sabalenka wasn't just irritated, she was panicking. Maybe it wasn't true. Maybe it was exaggerated. Maybe it was completely misinterpreted. But perception becomes reality, especially in the world of sports. What started as a celebration for Eala evolved into a debate about merit, favoritism, insecurity, and shifting power. This wasn't just an award anymore. This was a symbol of change, and change is always uncomfortable, especially for those at the top.
When tension reaches a boiling point, someone always speaks first. This time, it was Sabalenka. At her next press conference, reporters circled her like sharks, waiting for a quote, a reaction, anything they could turn into a headline. Sabalenka walked in with her usual confidence, but her eyes revealed she knew exactly what the world had been saying about her. A reporter opened the session with the question everyone wanted to ask. What do you think about Alexandra Eala receiving the International Rising Legacy honor? Sabalenka paused. Too long. Just long enough for the silence to feel dangerous. Then she forced a smile, the kind that tries to hide truth but fails. It's surprising. I didn't expect that, but good for her. On paper, it looked harmless, but her tone, her hesitation, her clenched jaw, it told a different story. Another reporter followed up with, "Do you think the award was deserved?" This time, she didn't smile. "I think honors should reflect achievements. That's all I'll say." Those words hit harder than any shouting, harder than any insult, harder than any tweet. Within minutes, headlines exploded. Sabalenka throws shade at Eala's award. Sabalenka questions Eala's recognition. Sabalenka, honors should reflect achievements. The narrative was now officially out of her control. Fans defending Sabalenka argued she was simply being honest. Fans defending Eala accused Sabalenka of being threatened. Analysts claimed this was the first crack in the armor of tennis's emotional powerhouse. Meanwhile, Eala stayed silent, but silence sometimes speaks louder than words. She didn't clap back, she didn't take sides, she didn't fire back in interviews. She just trained, focused, prepared for her next match. And that drove even more speculation. She's too calm. She's not intimidated. She's letting Sabalenka bury herself. The tension became palpable. At the practice courts, videos captured Sabalenka hitting balls harder than usual, each swing fueled by frustration. Meanwhile, Eala appeared composed, unmoved, centered. Two players, two completely different energies, one trying to maintain control, one unknowingly taking control. By now, this wasn't just an award. It had become psychological warfare. And everyone watching knew something bigger was coming. A showdown, a collision, a match that would turn this emotional war into a physical one. The tour was waiting. The fans were waiting. The players were waiting. Because you can't have a rising star and a threatened champion in the same space without something exploding. And that explosion was closer than anyone realized. Awards don't appear out of nowhere. There's always a story, a reason, a debate behind the scenes. The International Rising Legacy honor was originally created to recognize a young athlete whose impact reached beyond trophies. It was about hope, representation, influence, the spark of something bigger. But here's the truth that fueled the drama. Even the committee didn't expect to choose Eala. She wasn't the top junior. She wasn't the highest ranked. She wasn't the biggest name. But she was the one with the narrative the world couldn't ignore. Her journey wasn't polished. It wasn't engineered. It wasn't predictable. Her story was raw, human, emotional. A girl from a country with no tennis legacy suddenly shaking the tour with heart, grit, and unfiltered authenticity. That's what the award was about. But the world, especially the competitive world of women's tennis, rarely sees the deeper meaning. Instead, people saw politics, favoritism, hype. The truth? Eala earned it, just not in ways that rankings can measure. Meanwhile, Sabalenka saw something else. A threat to her spotlight, a shift in media attention, a rising star stealing headlines during her prime. People forget this. Champions aren't scared of losing matches. They're scared of losing relevance. And that fear is often masked as anger, or denial, or panic. But behind the scenes, something else was happening. Something that would soon change the narrative entirely. Insiders revealed that the committee didn't choose Eala because of pressure or favoritism. They chose her because she represented the future of global tennis. Because in rooms where decisions were made, her name meant growth, inspiration, a new direction for a sport that desperately needed fresh stories.
This wasn't about replacing Sabalenka. It wasn't about undermining champions. It wasn't about creating conflict. But conflict happened anyway, because emotions don't follow logic. And in this emotional storm, Eala learned a lesson she shouldn't have needed to learn so early. When you rise, people don't always clap. Sometimes they panic. As the days passed, the noise slowly softened, not because people forgot, but because every controversy eventually transforms into curiosity. People began asking, what does this mean for Eala's future? Is the rivalry with Sabalenka real? Will this honor motivate her or break her? But the most important question was never asked out loud. Can she carry the weight that comes with being chosen? Eala didn't ask for the spotlight. She didn't chase headlines. She didn't ignite the rivalry. The world did. And Sabalenka? She was forced to confront a truth even she didn't expect to face. The biggest threat to a champion isn't defeat. It's the emergence of someone the world suddenly loves more. This entire saga, the honor, the panic, the statements, the emotions, became more than a controversial moment. It became a mirror reflecting the insecurity of champions, a mirror reflecting the pressure on rising stars, a mirror reflecting how easily narratives twist into battles. But beneath the noise, one thing remained clear. The honor was just a symbol. The real story was Eala's rise. A rise so unexpected it shook the foundations of the WTA. A rise so powerful it rattled the top. A rise so emotional that it forced everyone to ask, what happens now? Does Sabalenka fight back on court? Does Eala embrace her role as a new face of the sport? Do they collide in a match that becomes an instant classic? Or is this rivalry the beginning of a new era? Because this moment, this honor, wasn't the end of the story. It was the spark. The first chapter of a rivalry that might define the next decade of women's tennis. And so the question remains, was Sabalenka truly panicking? Or was she simply witnessing the arrival of the player who will one day replace her? Think about it.
In a sport where legends fall and new stars rise overnight, Alexandra Eala's unexpected honor didn't just shift attention, it shifted the balance of power. If you want more breakdowns of the rivalries, controversies, and emotional battles shaping women's tennis, make sure to like, subscribe, and join the conversation below. And Sabalenka's reaction proved something deeper. Change is coming whether the champions are ready or not.